So asking these folks who want your vote, who send me envelopes begging me for campaign funds every 10 times a day, ask them, where are you going to get the $196 billion, and how do you equitably justify the benefits differential between now government pensioners and private pensioners? Hi, everybody. This is Lad Dilgard. Happy New Year. Welcome to another episode of Stand and Speak. Today's fact of the day is the Social Security Fairness Act is going to cost American taxpayers $196 billion over the next 10 years to ensure fairness between government pensioners and earners on Social Security. So just a little background, the Social Security Act was passed in 1935 under FDR, and it was originally designed to keep elderly folks out of poverty. And it was sold as a pension system where you paid into it over the course of your life, the government invested it for you, and then it returned it to you so you could not starve to death like elderly people were doing in the 1930s. The Social Security system, because there was money there, has turned into something that is a whole lot different than that. First of all, there's not as many workers per retiree, so the system is scheduled to be, the trust fund for Social Security will be bankrupt in 9 years. That's 2033. And every person in Congress has looked at the Social Security Trust Fund as a big trough of money to use for other purposes. So now Social Security is used to pay for disabled people. It is given to illegal immigrants. It is used for government funding because we're running huge government deficits. So there is no Social Security Trust Fund. A lot of people think it won't be there when they retire and so on. Now, we've been down this road before. Back in the early 1980s, there was a commission put together, a bipartisan commission to study Social Security and to figure out how they could keep it solvent for future generations. And a series of Social Security amendments were passed by Congress, signed by Reagan. And part of those amendments was the WEP and the GPO, the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset. And according to a website called fedsmith.com, the windfall elimination provision reduced Social Security income of local, state, and federal retired employees who worked in jobs covered by Social Security, private sector jobs, and also got a government annuity from their non-Social Security covered government employment. So if you paid into the civil service retirement system or federal employee retirement system or one of the, I think, 5,000 or so different public pension systems, your income in retirement was offset by those, so you wouldn't double dip in government pensions and in Social Security. So it was designed to have a level of government pensions or government payments after you retire. Similarly, the GPO or government pension offset was designed to ensure that individuals receiving government pensions from work not covered by Social Security, such as federal workers, didn't receive spousal or survivor benefits exceeding what they would receive if they had earned Social Security benefit through covered employment. So you had private sector employees who paid into Social Security their entire life, government pension employees who paid into government pensions who normally retire earlier and with greater benefits. And the folks back then wanted to kind of even those out. Now, some people earned private sector benefits or paid into Social Security through private sector income and then also public sector income. This was designed to not allow them to double dip or to get payouts from both pension systems. So now we have passed bipartisan the Social Security Fairness Act, which has been pushed by public sector unions since the 1980s to remove that offset so government employees could earn substantially more than private sector employees who had paid into Social Security over the course of their lives. And I put together this raw spreadsheet. These numbers are fake, but essentially, if you're a private sector employee, private sector retiree getting Social Security, let's say you get $1,350 a month. The system is set up in a progressive way so that higher earners earn less percentage of their employment income in retirement than low earners do in Social Security. So let's just say middle of the road, $1,350. And if you're in a public sector pension, let's say you get $1,350, which is going to be low for government pension payouts. And again, government pensions pay out earlier. Some people even get full retirement in their late 40s, early 50s. That happens very often. Teachers, firefighters, you name it. And that's a different discussion as to whether that's fair or not. And over the course of time, public sector pension retirees earn substantially more in retirement benefits than Social Security retirees. So let's say that after the Social Security Fairness Act, which was passed 76-20, I think, in the Senate, and overwhelming bipartisan amount in the House. I think it was 300 and something in the House voted for it. So it has a lot of benefactors on both sides who are going to the trough for public sector workers. So let's say the private sector, you've been working in the private sector for 40 years, paying into Social Security, contributing to it, you're going to earn that amount, $1,350. But let's say you worked in the private sector for 10, 15 years and enough to get a full Social Security benefit. You get a full Social Security benefit, plus you get your public sector union benefits. So let's say that's $1,350. So you're making double what your neighbor who paid in Social Security is making. Now, you can say that's unfair, which it is, but you can also say, where are you going to pay for that if you're in Congress, if you're Bill Cassidy, J.D. Vance, Sherrod Brown, John Kennedy, whoever is pushing for this. Garrett Graves was the Republican congressman out of Louisiana that initially sponsored this. Where are you going to get that $196 billion over 10 years? I would like to know where that's going to be. Senator Rand Paul wanted to offset the cost of this, and he proposed raising the Social Security retirement age from 67 to 70 over 12 years, which seems pretty reasonable, and that would have offset the cost. That got shot down. So these people, Republicans and Democrats, who say they care about debts, they care about deficits, they care about equity, they care about Social Security being solvent, bullshit across the board. They don't care about any of those things, and they're showing it with the Social Security Fairness Act. I'm going to read from some skeptics of the Social Security Fairness Act, starting with the Wall Street Journal editorial page. Neither political party is serious about spending restraint, and the latest evidence is the Fairness Act, Social Security Fairness Act, the Senate whopped into law late last week. This is a giveaway to public unions that whistles past the program's looming insolvency. So one change would restore a bonus to government workers who spent part of their careers in private industry, giving them more generous benefits than retirees who earned the same amount in non-government work. A separate change would boost benefits for public workers who are spouses of private workers. So they're getting more. It's going to cost us. So It's a matter of fairness, according to lawmakers. Bill Cassidy invoked teachers and firefighters and police officers, saying the reform would stop punishing them for having elected to serve our communities. Oh, that's glorious. That is absolutely glorious. So retirement benefits for government employees, it goes on, are at least comparable to similarly paid private workers, and they are often much more generous for those who meet requirements for a defined benefit pension. How many other people in the private sector in their companies still have a defined benefit pension? I mean, you used to see those every now and then. Now you don't see them hardly at all. And if you do see them, they're begging for a bailout from the federal government. Lawmakers are reversing reforms passed in the 1980s to rescue Social Security that kept public employees in step with everyone else under Social Security's benefit program. So mandatory programs, as we've talked about on here, like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, 70% of the federal budget. So you can cut whatever garbage you want to from discretionary spending. You can cut the military back. You can do all kinds of things. But 70% of the leviathan of the federal government is Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. So Republicans abandon reform. You know, these are not serious people when it comes to debt. Bill Cassidy, John Cornyn, Tom Cotton, Bill Hagerty, Josh Hawley, John Kennedy, James Lankford, Jerry Moran, John Boozman, Mike Braun, Shelley Capito. These are all Republican senators who are okay with bankrupting the Social Security system. Mark Wayne Mullen, Lisa McCarthy, Pete Ricketts, Marco Rubio, Rick Scott, Tim Scott, Dan Sullivan, J.D. Vance. So asking these folks who want your vote, who send me envelopes begging me for campaign funds every 10 times a day, ask them, where are you going to get the $196 billion, and how do you equitably justify the benefits differential between now government pensioners and private pensioners? And this is another step in terms of the imbalance between government employees and private employees. Government employees, difficult to fire, good pensions, early retirement. Private employees, you're on your own. Do the best you can. Update that resume. Hope your company doesn't go out of business. And the government will keep taxing you more and more to pay for garbage like this. So again, the critics are bipartisan as well. So Henry J. Aaron from the Brookings Institute, Senior Fellow Emeritus, said the Social Security Fairness Act allows high earners to receive benefits in disproportion to their income without WEP or GPO. Retirees who spent part of their careers in public service and another part in jobs taxed by Social Security could appear to have lower earnings than they did, Aaron said. The WEP and GPO formulas used by the Social Security Administration to calculate benefits aren't perfect, but there are ways to improve them without completely repealing the provisions. And that's something I read when I was researching this several times over, is that there's many ways to tweak the benefits so you can target the poorest people, the folks who really need it, without giving somebody who has a former public sector worker who has a net worth of millions of dollars to get double or triple what a Social Security beneficiary would receive. The Cato Institute, this libertarian, and it's more predictable, but it says that the Social Security Fairness Act will increase taxpayer costs and unfairly benefit public sector workers. And this is a good point that Cato Institute makes that I made several times online, which is Social Security is not a pension system. It's a transfer payment. It's, as they say, a pay-as-you-go scheme, maybe called a Ponzi scheme. But Social Security as a pension fund, it ain't it. It's a welfare program to keep elderly people from starving, and they was sold as a pension fund, but when George W. Bush, in his ham-handed way 20 years ago, said, hey, why don't we start privatizing parts of Social Security, which they did in Chile and some other countries, so people could keep and see what they were investing in and accumulating wealth, everybody went crazy. Oh, you can't do that. The stock market is so volatile, you'll bankrupt everybody. You'll be left with nothing. So don't tell me that Social Security is a pension. It's a pay-as-you-go scheme where taxes collected from today's workers fund the benefits of today's beneficiaries. So this makes Social Security susceptible to adverse demographic shifts, and its financial stability relies on a favorable worker to beneficiary ratio, which we don't have today, which is why it will be bankrupt in 9 years. So as a Ponzi scheme, Social Security pays benefits promised to earlier generation, but it depends on new revenues from current and future workers. So this is another $200 billion hit to that Ponzi scheme. We're all going to have to pay for it. If you got a public sector family member whose benefits are going to be bumped up there, tell them, you're welcome for all of us out here in the private sector world to pay for that and to get Social Security. So it is a absurdity, and it is really kind of disheartening and sickening that so many people who profess to care about deficits and Social Security and national debts and that they are okay with just shoving more money into the trough so people that don't need it can go in there and bury their heads in it and eat at the trough. So that's my take on it. Feel free to comment below. If you want to say, hey, I paid into it, it's mine, man. Like I've seen online 1,000 times, fine, go ahead. You paid into it. You didn't pay into anything. You paid into a transfer scheme or a Ponzi scheme. So if you want to say, I was a firefighter and I worked 12 years pumping gas before I became a firefighter and I deserve both, fine. That's not the point. The point is that it's all government money. It's all coming from taxpayers. Public pensioners are going to get way more than they even do now, which is way more than the private sector does now. And now they're going to get even more. So that is the way it works. So go ahead and subscribe if you like this. If you don't like it, that's fine. There's plenty of people that are on the other side of this. But when the bill comes due, just remember back here that I probably told you first. So have a great year, everybody, and we'll be continuing on with our series on the Trump appointments as we go along and lead up to January 20th. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.